to my podcast. Life's not fair.
Good job. Hi, everybody, and welcome back to my podcast, Life's Not Fair. Today we have a special guest on episode 4. Her name is Adriana.
Stop.
Hazel's trying to steal this show. It's my friend Adriana that I went to high school with, and she's going to share her story about her daughter Abigail. And I'm really excited, so let's get into it. So this is Adriana, everybody. Her and I actually went to high school together, and this year is actually our 10-year reunion. Well, I don't know if there's actually a reunion, but it's going to be 10 years. Isn't that crazy?
That's insane.
I know. It
And I
flew
was
by.
the other day, I think it was on Facebook or something, you know how you have like a memory thing, like 10 years ago or whatever. Like a picture of us playing basketball popped up.
Oh my gosh.
For a long time.
Yeah. So her and I actually met through basketball. We played together. And yeah. Did you play all 4 years? I can't remember.
No, I played freshman and sophomore, and then like a new coach came in, and there's issues with that, and
But we had fun our freshman year. We had a lot of fun, I feel like.
yeah, it was Coach Alex.
Yes. Kind
Yeah,
of
talk to
scary
her.
at times.
Huh?
She was kind of scary at times.
Yeah. Huh. I think like last year, I think she like commented on one of the pictures or something. So I talked to her for a little bit, but
Oh, nice. How is she doing?
I guess she's doing fine. And then, do you remember Coach Sarah?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Did you play all 4 years? I can't remember.
No, just freshman and sophomore, and then I did water polo, which I
Yeah.
enjoyed. That was nice because there was no running.
Yeah. So I was gonna do the junior year, but then the whole coach thing happened. I'm like, how am I gonna get involved with that?
Yeah, exactly.
Um,
So yeah, now you moved out of state and you live in Virginia, right?
Correct.
Nice.
Yeah. So I wanted to come like out of state after I graduated high school. Just I guess I don't know. I guess learn something new. I don't know.
Mm-hmm.
So I got a scholarship for the college I went to in Virginia, so I just kind of left for Virginia. And it's like, okay, well, either I'm gonna grow as an individual or I'm gonna sink. So
Right.
I think it's been really good for me to, I don't know, maybe separate a little bit from my parents and from the high school people, and I think it was really good for me. So
Now, are your parents still in Florida or no?
well, so I think like my sophomore year of college, yeah, my dad moved up here. His company transferred him
Okay.
for work, and then my mom followed with my brother. So we all ended up here. But my mom just recently got remarried like 2 years ago, so she's back in Florida with her husband.
Okay.
But my dad and brother are still here. They work and whatever. So
Nice. So at least you have them.
yeah,
Yeah.
so she comes up for like the holidays, or like she'll be up here in March because Abigail's going to a pretty big surgery then. So she'll come and help me with my son. So.
Oh, that's nice. That's awesome.
And then you live close to your mom, or?
Yeah, so we're like kind of in the middle of everybody. So my mom lives like 15 minutes from us, and then literally like 3 streets over, my grandparents live from her. So we're like 15 minutes from them, and then my husband's parents live probably like 20 minutes from us. So we're kind of like in the middle of everybody, which is nice. So
Yeah.
that, but yeah, I've always wanted to move out of state, but it's kind of scary, especially now that I have kids. Like if I would have done it pre-kids, but
Yeah.
they like help us out so much, so it's like one of those things, like, do I want to leave and have nobody?
Yeah, I'm always thinking about moving back up here with her husband, just because I think it's beneficial, the help I can get from her, because I live like an hour away from my dad.
Mm-hmm.
So like something like he'll help me, but it takes him an hour to get here. If I have to drop off the kids in case of emergency, I have to drive an hour that way.
Oh, yeah.
And my in-laws live about 45 minutes, so
Okay. So did you met your husband in Virginia, right?
yeah.
Okay. Awesome. Did you meet him at
Yeah.
school?
Yep. I
No.
met I was in a relationship in college, and that didn't end too good. So I think it was good for me to get out because he had mental issues.
Mm-hmm.
And he was on medicine all the time. And the one time he didn't take medicine, he started to get really aggressive.
Mm-hmm.
And I knew he had like depression and stuff, but I didn't think it was that bad, like to where he couldn't function without his medicine. So
Right.
I quickly ended that relationship just because I didn't want to be with someone who, could go crazy at any moment.
Yeah, right. Yeah.
So yeah, so I don't know, somewhere, I don't know, I think I gave myself like a 1 year break or something, and one of my good friends from college, she like encouraged me to go online. I'm like, no, I don't want to do online. It's too much for me. But I did. I was on there for 30 minutes, and he messaged me, and
Oh my gosh. And the rest is history, right?
yeah, so yeah, it's been quite a ride.
Oh my gosh. And you guys have been married for how long?
So it'll be 6 years, this April.
Okay. So yeah, my husband and I just celebrated 6 years in January.
Okay, yeah.
So yeah, we both got married in 2018. Nice. And then your kids are how old?
So Gunner he just turned 3 this past November.
Mm-hmm.
And Abigail would be 4. I mean, not 4. Abigail would be 2 on our anniversary.
Oh wow.
Our anniversary, so that's interesting.
Oh my goodness, that's
Yeah.
crazy. So they're pretty. How far apart are they?
17 months.
Okay, nice. Yeah, the 202 is not easy.
Brutal. How
Yeah,
far apart yours?
they're 21 months. Yeah, so my son was born in March, and then my daughter turned 2 in June. So now he'll be 3 in March, and she'll be 5 in June.
Yeah, I don't know. I don't know if well, it kind of just all worked out because with Gunnar, we had infertility treatment. We were trying for a couple, like a year and a half, close to 2 years, and I
Mm-hmm.
couldn't get pregnant. And so we did infertility treatment, and then I always thought that maybe that we would have to try like treatments again to get pregnant again. We knew we at least wanted 2 kids.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, it was one of the things where I wasn't like we weren't preventing it because I thought I was infertile per se.
Right.
Yeah, so like 5 months. Gunnar was 5 months, and then I got pregnant. So
Oh my goodness. And that was just like completely by surprise, right?
yeah, and I wouldn't encourage people. I don't know. That's just my personal opinion, but I would encourage people to have kids that are close together because it's hard.
That's what I always say. I'm like, it is so hard. So hard. And also, like, so I got pregnant with Hayden. Like, technically, like, my date of conception was literally like Hazel's first birthday. So, but we knew we like wanted to, and I knew I wanted them close together,
Mhm.
and I didn't realize how hard it was gonna be. But so with when we were like talking about having another baby, and then we got pregnant with the twins, like because they were technically due in December, they would have almost been 3 years apart from Hayden. So that was like a better like age gap for me. Um, yeah, I could never do the 2 under 2 again.
So you knew you wanted to get pregnant again after Hayden?
I definitely wanted a third one. My husband was kind of like on the fence about it just because like Hayden is a true wild boy. Like wild. So we were kind of like back and forth about it, and then we were just kind of like if it happens, it happens. And then obviously it happened, and then we found out there were two. So that was also shocking because I was like, oh, I wanted them further apart than Hazel and Hayden's age gap, and then I was finding out I was gonna have two at the same time.
Yeah.
So, but yeah, I was like, and like I wasn't sure, like, because we were just like, okay, if it happens, it happens. Like, it was never like we're gonna like try to plan. Like, it was just like we'll try and see how it goes. Um, but yeah, it was crazy.
Yeah, I heard a lot.
Obviously,
Yeah, yeah, it
yeah.
was a lot, especially once you turn like 2. It was terrible too.
Hmm.
Ah,
Yeah, and for with Hazel, for us, 3 was worse than 2. And Hayden, 2s were terrible, so, and he'll be 3, and I'm like, I'm nervous. I'm very nervous.
Yeah, I don't want any more kids, just because they're so close together and they're both wild in their own way, and it's I feel like I'm always busy. I don't have enough free time for just me and my husband, so.
Yeah, and that's another thing too, is like it's very hard to like date your spouse when you have such 2 kids so small, and trying to balance like date night and just spending time together. Like that's something we definitely struggle with too.
Yeah, because like I said, my dad lives far away, so like if we wanted to go out, just the 2 of us, it has to be like really planned and not, sometimes if we go out, the kids come out with us, so it's, I don't know,
That's always chaotic for us.
so chaotic.
Bringing the kids out to
Yeah.
dinner. Yeah. And like Hazel, if you bring just her, like she's fine. But then you bring Hayden and then he like antagonizes her.
Yep.
And then it's like, I'm like, can we please get the bill? Like, we'll just go.
Yep.
Yeah. But it's like hard too, because we try to take him, like Hayden, out with us so that like hopefully like they say like, oh, if you take him out more, like he'll learn. And it's like, it's been almost 3 years of taking him out places and he still ain't learned. Like he does not care.
Yeah, I feel like they do better when they're by themselves,
Yes.
because like Gunner, he's the older one and he just likes to antagonize Abigail all the time, and then she'll, either bite him back or punch him back. And
Oh my gosh. Yeah, that sounds like mine too. They're always fighting. So let's kind of like just get into your story and what you've gone through. And I know you're coming out with a book, and I'm so excited. It's
yeah,
amazing.
yeah. So, like I said, we had Gunner. He was born in 2020, so like in the middle of COVID, so that was its own ordeal by itself because like when I had him, like my parents weren't allowed to come to the hospital, and like family and friends, and so. And then when we came home, like my parents came and stuff, but like other people we didn't want to come just because of the whole COVID thing, and like there wasn't, I guess, enough information or research on it. So I guess just to prevent stuff from happening.
Right.
And then I had a C-section with both of them, but for Gunner, I wanted to have him naturally, but he was breached, so I couldn't have him, naturally. But I felt like I recovered pretty quickly from my C-section with him compared to Abigail. And I don't know, I think like when you're a first-time mom, like everything's very overwhelming, like, because they don't talk. Why are you crying? Like, so.
Yeah, the emotions too.
Yeah. And then like I feel like you have this like, I don't know, after you have the baby, I don't know. At least for me, like the first 3 months after having him were really emotional, because my hormones were up and down, and so yeah, yeah, so it was, and then like my husband works in the city, so he works close to DC, so he has to like drive an hour there and back. So
Oh, wow.
out of the house by like 4 a.m. and he doesn't get back until like 4 p.m. So I'm pretty much alone with the kids all the time.
Right.
So that was really hard, and like, I didn't want to like lack as a wife either, and so that was, yeah, it's very hard for me. But I think with time we just kind of got the routine of stuff, and
Right.
but yeah, and so like I said, we just Abigail kind of came by surprise. We knew we wanted another child, hopefully a girl. And like when we first got together, he wanted 4 kids, and I told him like I'm not having no 4 kids. I'm like, no way.
I'm
You have
sure
lost
he's
your
changed his
mind.
mind, right?
You have lost your mind. You need to go find somebody else, I told him. And
Oh
then we
my
had
gosh.
Gunner. He was, no, I just want one more. I'm like, yeah, that makes sense.
Uh-huh.
Yeah, so we got pregnant with Abigail, but with Abigail, everything was so different from the beginning. Like from the moment I got pregnant with her, I was sick the whole time. like with Gunnar, I was like, I had the morning sickness, but it was only like for the first, 3 months or whatever. But
Okay.
with Abigail, I was sick the whole time. Like I couldn't keep anything down. I lost a lot of weight with her, and so that wasn't healthy either because if I'm not gaining weight, she's not gonna grow.
Right.
Yeah, but so with her, I started going to my OB when I was 4 weeks along, so a month along.
Mm-hmm.
And I went so early because I have something called a bicornuate uterus, and it's when your uterus is split in half, so it kind of looks like a heart.
Mm-hmm.
So with Gunnar, he was on the bigger side of my uterus, and then with Abigail, she was on the smaller side. So
Okay.
I got checked in with OB pretty quickly, and everything seemed fine in the first month or so. But
Mm-hmm.
when I was about 12 weeks along, I went back for another appointment because at that point she was bigger, and that way they could give me a more accurate due date.
Right.
But then when they did the ultrasound, they're like, "Oh no, she's too little." And I'm like, "Well, I'm not a big person, like, so I don't know what you
Right.
want from me." So she sent me to maternal fetal, which I had gone my whole pregnancy with gunner just because the shape of my uterus.
Right. Because you're high risk, technically.
Yeah, yeah. So maternal fetal was like, well, she's measuring small, but she's still too early on, so don't worry about it, whatever. But I feel like with her, like every appointment brought something new, like,
Yeah.
and every appointment it was like something negative, oh well, we think she has this and we think she has that. And like I remember, like, I don't know, I was 15, 16 weeks along. I went to like a new maternal fetal, just because she was closer to home, and she's like, oh, she has something called trisomy 18. And I'm like, how do you know this? Like, she's too small for you to be telling me for sure she has this syndrome.
Right.
And she wanted me to abort her right there and then. She said, I'll give you this, you take to the hospital, and you will never have to worry about it. And you can always have more. And I'm like,
Oh my gosh.
yeah, yeah. She like really
Wow.
got me into it. And she's like, you're
Oh,
gonna
that
she's
just gave me chills.
yeah, yeah. So, and I was so upset. I'm like, why would you be telling a mom to abort her baby when the baby's still too small?
Mm-hmm.
And I don't personally believe in abortion. That's just, my
Mm-hmm.
take on it. But yeah, so when I got home, I went to this appointment by myself. So when I got home, I talked to my husband about it, and he's like, I'm not gonna work on, we're not really gonna worry about it. She's still too early, whatever.
Right.
So at that point, I decided to go back to my original maternal fetal, the one I went with Gunner. And he's like, she's still too early for me to be telling you this kind of stuff. I don't know why these other doctors told you that. And all he said was her jaw's really small, but we'll see how it goes. So I was like, okay, well, that's fine. But I continued to have regular checkups with maternal fetal and my OBGYN, and it just seemed like every appointment brought something negative, and it was like, it just got to a point where I wouldn't enjoy my pregnancy anymore. I was just
Right.
at the point where like I just want to have her to see what she really has, and just that's it.
And your like emotions and hormones are already so all over the place when you're pregnant,
Yeah,
and then just to bring on the negative, 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 I'm sure it
yeah,
was overwhelming.
yeah. And so I don't know. I just stopped enjoying my pregnancy overall. And I would always try to go into the doctor, and it just got to a point where I just didn't want to go to the doctor anymore. Maternal fetal was pretty good the whole time, but
Mm-hmm.
it was just like the OBGYN, like she would scare me, and and then I ended up so I think like 20 when I was about 20 weeks along, my maternal fetal was like, let's send you to a bigger hospital, a hospital that's equipped to have baby with a obstructive airway in case she needs to be intubated since she's born.
Mm-hmm.
And so we went to like different hospitals. We went to John Hopkins, that's a pretty popular hospital.
Right.
Uh, And so I had an appointment with them. I like them, they have a level 4 NICU and everything seemed fine. But then on my way back home, I started to bleed.
Oh,
And that
wow.
was about 23, 24 weeks along. So that in itself was terrifying to hear him bleeding, like having contractions, and I'm like, holy moly. Like,
Mm-hmm.
so I called them. They're like, well, just go to your nearest hospital. So my dad drove me to my nearest hospital, and um, he just said, well, you're bleeding too much. If we can't get the bleeding to stop, we're gonna have to take her out.
Mm-hmm.
So that, I had to deal with that and my emotions with that. Like, what about like if she comes out too early? Like, there's a good possibility she might have passed away just because she was measuring so small the whole time.
Right.
So I went to the hospital. It's called the NOAA. It's pretty big too, but they have level 4 NICU, but they're not always like like ENT and those people. They're not always on call.
Right.
So they're really mainly there Monday through Friday. So um, yeah. So I at that point they try to airlift me to Hopkins, but Hopkins didn't have a bed available for me. So UVA had a bed available for me at that point. So I got airlifted to UVA, and that's kind of how I ended up at UVA.
Mm-hmm.
And I liked UVA, the doctors were good. They were really realistic about stuff, but that didn't scare me the whole time either. So
That's good.
and I just kind of established myself there, so I stopped going to OBGYN, like my maternal fetal, because UVA had everything. They had OBGYN, maternal fetal. So I would just go there at the beginning. I would go there like every other week. And then like when I was about like 30 weeks, I would go there every week.
Mm-hmm.
But within that time frame, so much changed. I had blood work done during that time frame, and that's when I found out that I have something called 22q duplication.
Mm-hmm.
And it's a syndrome a lot of people have. They just don't know they have it.
Mm-hmm.
So, and that was hard for me to hear because all this time, I'm thinking there's nothing wrong with me.
Mm-hmm.
And I just always thought I had a speech impediment because, I'm partially deaf. So I always associated, my speaking with me being partially deaf. Um, yeah, so that was interesting, and I
Oh,
had a hard time dealing with that and the possibility of, me most likely passing this down to Abigail.
right.
So, yeah, so that's kind of how it's been. And, you know, like later in my pregnancy, when I was about 30 something weeks along, she started to have growth restriction in utero. So, and then I started to have like actual contractions, but I wasn't dilating. So there's really nothing they wanted to do at that point. They wanted her to grow as much as possible before, taking her out. But
Right.
yeah, I think when I was like 33 weeks along, I got airlifted again because I was having contractions all the time, and I thought maybe my like amniotic fluid was coming out, and so, but it wasn't. But and then the last time I was hospitalized with her, they just kept me there the whole time, just because my contractions were too close together.
Right.
But I feel like, I don't know, I feel like within this whole journey, like, my pregnancy and stuff, I feel like the one thing that has remained constant is my faith, because, and I'm not really saying this just because I'm a Christian, because, I just think that, and that's something I really believe God has been the most constant thing through my ups and downs, like,
Yes.
like marriage issues, because, when Abigail was born, she was born at 35 weeks and she was only 3 pounds and
Oh, wow.
13 ounces. So she was pretty tiny to be 35
Very.
weeks.
Yeah.
So, like when she was born, like Devin wasn't there with me because they're like, oh, well, we're not gonna take her out. You're not even dilated, so we're not gonna take her out until you're 5 centimeters dilated. Well, I sent them home to grab some stuff for me, and that night he left, and like 2 hours later, I'm calling him. I'm full blown labor, 10 centimeters dilated, and here I am by myself in the OR, in the middle of the night.
Stop it. Oh
Yeah,
my gosh.
yeah.
No.
So I think that was really hard for me just to know that I was I went through all this, seeing Abigail be born all by myself, and when she came out, she didn't cry, you know.
Mhm.
And we knew she had like a obstruction, airway obstruction, so that terrified me when she came out. She wasn't crying. I thought she
Yeah.
would.
Yeah.
They finally, I guess took all the amniotic fluid out of her lungs and whatever, and she started crying. And they took her to the NICU, so I never got to see her, until a couple hours later. But when Devin arrived, I was still in the OR, but they were closing me up, so he waited for me in the recovery room, and he went and saw Abigail, and he said to me was, she's doing well, so I'm thinking like 5 a.m. that day I saw her, like, I don't know, like maybe 3 or 4 hours after she was born. And the thing about it is, and I'm sure you feel this way, but the NICU is so different than what people say it is. Until you live it, you don't know what it is.
Absolutely.
Because I read books on it, I watched videos on it, and I knew she was going to be in the NICU for some time. I just didn't know, how different the NICU was going to be. Like the videos show you, I don't know, I guess like a very unrealistic view of what the NICU is really about. And
Yes.
and I remember going to NICU that morning, and everything was so peaceful. And it was so, I don't know, to me that gave me a lot of peace because a lot of times I'm sure like when you go to NICU, it's all beeping and babies crying and doctors screaming, "Come help me!" Come, I'm like, and I thought I was
Yes.
gonna experience that, but I didn't. And at that moment, I don't know. I think it was really good for me to see that the NICU can also be a good thing.
Okay, so you were saying you were in NICU and you like kind of felt at peace about it.
Yeah. So yeah, I'm sure the NICU, it's different than what people expect or what people have in their mind, and I think I think the NICU is definitely a roller coaster. It has a lot of ups and downs. Like,
Mhm.
when Abigail was first born, she did fine for a couple of weeks. She would have no oxygen, no nothing. So I'm like, oh, okay, well, I guess her jaw isn't that bad.
Mhm.
Because the issue with her jaw is like so small and so pushed back that it was obstructing her airway. So, um, yeah, but then like I don't know, maybe she was a month or something. She started having like a lot of issues. Like she was coding all the time, and
Which is the scariest thing ever.
yes, and the thing about it is, so they put her on oxygen, but she had something that's called high flow. That's like the oxygen that's put through your nose, and even with that, she was still coding, and it got to a point where like the ENT got involved with it, and we had to, kind of make a decision, about what would be the best thing for her, in order for her to be able to come home at sometime.
Mhm.
And so the whole trach thing started to be talked about, and my husband really struggled with her, having to get a trach, just because like if you go out in public, people we didn't want people to just look at her and stare at her, and that kind of stuff, and
Right.
so it was hard for us to come to like a mutual agreement on it. And I think with a lot of praying, and we prayed over with our pastor about it, and we kind of got peace about it. And so she got her trach in, and I think we're so grateful for her trach because right now that's like her lifeline. That's really the way she breathes in and out. Just because she has that airway obstruction. But this past March of last year, she had a jaw extraction done, and the reason why I guess she didn't have the jaw extraction while she was in the NICU
Mhm.
was because she was missing part of her right side jawbone. And so the surgeon didn't really have anything to bring out, if her whole jaw wasn't, there, I guess. So, um, in December of 2022, we went in for a MRI of her whole face, especially her jaw, and the surgeon called us back like after an hour, and he said, "Well, I have good news for you, he said, that bone that was missing is starting to grow.
Oh, wow.
And I said, what do you mean by it's starting to grow? He's like, yeah, it's starting to grow. So he got like on a conference call with us and he showed us how like the x-ray and the MRI had showed that the bone was actually starting to grow. So because originally we had to wait until she was about 3 or 4 and he was going to take a piece of her rib and make a jawbone.
Oh, wow.
So, we didn't want that to happen just because that's a pretty big surgery, but also, that means she would have the trach until she was at least 3 or 4.
Mm-hmm.
And yeah, so she had the jaw surgery done this past March, and I think it's really helped her a lot. She's off the ventilator now all the time,
Mm-hmm.
so it makes it easier to go out with her, because it's just her, and it's not like we have to lug around this heavy ventilator that's about 20 pounds.
Right.
So, and then she'll go in like a month and a half. So on March 13th, she'll go in for another distraction surgery, but this time he wants to bring both sides of her jaw forward. Her left side grows normal, but he wants to even it out, and he thinks the way to do that is by bringing both sides
Mm-hmm.
forward. And then she should be able to have her trach removed, so decannulate sometime this summer. So
Oh, wow.
yeah, but when any kid has a trach, it kind of delays them developmentally,
Mm-hmm.
And she also has like a pretty big cleft palate, so that's the other thing she has. And she doesn't eat a lot by mouth just because her cleft palate's so big, and there's a high chance of her aspirating, coming out her nose. So she has what we call a G tube, and it's a little tube that goes in her stomach, and that's kind of how we feed her, is through the stomach, through a feeding tube in the stomach. But yes, after she had this past surgery this past March, the surgeon came up to me and he said, I think, you and Abigail have gone through a lot, and I think maybe you should think about maybe writing a book on it. And I'm like, I don't realize you're be writing a book, because, I don't really I have a lot to say, but it's not like, not like, I don't know, I guess I told them, like, there's other people that have experienced something like that.
Mm-hmm.
The whole NICU journey and like their kiddo having a syndrome and that kind of stuff. And he's like, well, this is the first time that he knows that this type of surgery has been performed, just because, she's like, the bone grew a little bit, but she doesn't have like the whole bone.
Right.
And so he talked to like, I think a doctor in Europe. And he's like, him and this other doctor have never heard of any kind of surgery done on a baby like that has only a partial bone.
Mm-hmm.
So I prayed a lot about it, and I think the big thing with it is I didn't want people to think that I was just writing this book just because I wanted the money out of it, and I'm sure money will come out of it. But I think I want people to know that there's hope, and in the book I go obviously more in detail about our whole journey and how through it all God will give you peace, and it's not just, I don't know, I guess it's not just peace just for that moment, but I think it's just peace that will last if you continue to abide in Him.
Right.
And I'm not saying that I don't have my hard days with her, or like that every once in a while I don't get overwhelmed with her, or Gunner, and I feel like I think my biggest lesson through this all is that I've been able to experience things that Devin has never experienced. Like anytime she's coded, Devin has never been there. He has never seen her coded.
Oh my gosh.
And when I first came home, I would always question that. I'm like, why has her dad, like my husband, never seen Abigail code, but I've seen it all? Like, why am I having to carry this trauma? And
Right.
I'm like, when like a child codes, it's terrifying.
Mm-hmm.
Um,
Absolutely.
but I think through it all, I've learned that, through those moments, he has used those moments to shape me, not just as a mom, but also as a wife. But mainly, I think a lot of it as someone that can encourage other people. There's
Yes.
a young couple at church. They just had a baby, but when she was in the womb, they told, I guess, the parents that the baby had some kind of tumor in the neck, that the chances of the baby surviving birth was 0%.
Wow.
And I think that's probably been one of the moments where I found that, I'm going through this to hopefully encourage other people. And I think it was good for me to be able to encourage her and say, you will have your hard days, but everything will work out.
Right.
And I don't know, maybe, and I think a lot of it is that I feel like our society puts a lot of pressure on moms. Like
Mm-hmm.
I feel like we have to have it all together. Like, we have to be a super mom or a super wife,
Right.
and I had that conception or that idea. I believed that idea until I think Abigail was born. Because I think there's beauty in the brokenness. There's beauty in not being a super mom and having it all together. There's beauty in your house being a mess because you have kids. To me,
Yes.
like if my house is a mess with toys, then I know my kids are having fun.
Right.
And I try to make it a point to, I guess, not just let people know just about the good times, but also about the times that we struggle as a family, because there's been moments where my husband and I have not agreed on medical decisions for Abigail.
Right.
And eventually we pray about it and we come to a mutual decision, but it hasn't always been like that way.
Right.
And there's times that we haven't been able to have just alone time, the two of us, and I'm sure, if that happens too frequently, your marriage starts to have some kind of friction.
Yes.
So I think, I don't know. I don't know. I think, and I feel like this journey will continue to teach me things, as a person. And I always come back to the thought that God has me through it all for a purpose. And I don't know what the whole purpose of it is right now,
Absolutely.
but I always try to show the good and the bad, whether it's on social media, whether it's talking to a friend, because I'm big on, what makes you beautiful is your good and your bad moments,
Mm-hmm.
and I don't know, I don't know, I think I like talking to other broken people. I think I find beauty in that.
Yes.
So I've always loved that part, and I feel like the older I get, I like that more, like talk to people that are going through a hard time, because I feel like you can connect with that person. And I know like when you posted about your daughter passing away, I just I told my husband I can only imagine how she's feeling,
Yeah.
because that pain is terrible. Like I remember one time we thought we had lost Abigail, and she was 8 months along, like eight
Mm-hmm.
months, after she was born. And I'm like, I can only imagine. And I don't know, I feel like in time you will, that's the thing. I think in time healing will come, but
Right.
you'll never heal completely, and I don't think. And that's always something that I gotta remind myself, because I always say, will I ever heal from just all the trauma I've had, with Abigail and my pregnancy with her and the stuff I've seen.
Right.
And I don't think I ever will, you
Mm-hmm.
know, and I'm okay with that.
And I
You
think it's one of those things that you just like learn to deal with. Like
yeah.
you'll never be completely healed from it. Like I know I will never be completely healed from the trauma I endured, but I think it's just something that you learn to cope with day by day.
Yeah, and I think at least with our kids, we try to show them that, because I know like some parents don't want their kids to see them crying.
Mm-hmm.
And it's not like I want, my kids to see me crying all the time, but I think that it is okay, for them to see me have different emotions, or have their dads, have different emotions in front of them, because I think they come to learn that it is okay for people to show their emotions, that not everything in this life is happy,
Right.
you know. And like when I first had Abigail, obviously I cried a lot and stuff because she was in NICU, but I was afraid to like Gunner, see my emotions on me being sad or upset. But I've come to realize that it is important for him to see those emotions.
Mm-hmm.
So, and I definitely think like while she was in the NICU, because she was in the NICU for close to 4 months, I had a lot of mom guilt
Yes.
because I felt like I was devoting pretty much my whole life to Abigail, and I felt like it was hard for me to split my time between Abigail and Gunnar just because, Gunnar wasn't allowed in the NICU. And that was really hard for me to deal with that, because I wanted to be a good mom to Gunnar. And I just didn't know to at that point, because I was being consumed by the NICU and what Abigail was going through. And, I was also being consumed just because I was alone. My husband would only come up to UVA during the weekend because somebody had to work.
Right.
Um, and I found that a lot of people struggle with that. I've met
Yes.
a lot of NICU moms that struggle with the mom guilt and I think that's part of just being in NICU and having the kid that's sick. So
Yeah, and it's hard when your NICU baby is not your first baby
yeah.
because you do have to try to find that balance of your other kids at home,
Mhm.
but also, and that was definitely something I dealt with, was the mom guilt, because I would be gone at the hospital all day, but then I would come home and it's like time for them to go to bed and I'm not spending time with them, and I drop them off at school and head straight to the hospital. And it was especially hard since she was 2 hours away
Yeah.
and not close to home. So that really, I definitely felt that mom guilt. But in the end, like when it was all said and done, I just like told myself like I did the best I could,
Yeah.
trying to split my time between them. But it was definitely hard.
Yeah, and I think and the other thing I was talking to somebody about it the other day. At least at UVA or I guess in the NICU, they don't have support for parents.
Mm-hmm.
And what I mean by that is like there wasn't like I don't know, I guess there wasn't like a counselor to come talk to me.
Mm-hmm.
Like I feel like sometimes, at least that's just my personal opinion, like there was times where I didn't want to talk to my husband about it, 'cause I'm sure he was dealing with his own emotions. I
Yeah.
wanted to talk to somebody outside the family.
Mm-hmm.
And there, I don't think, at least at UVA, there isn't that. And
Mm-hmm.
I feel like even now, I feel like there's times where I don't want to talk to like my parents or my in-laws, because they
Mm-hmm.
probably know how I feel, and they're probably gonna say, "Oh, it'll work out." But sometimes I just want somebody to listen that's not in the family. And I actually joined a group a couple of weeks ago about NICU moms, and at least once a month we do like a video call and we just kind of share our emotions and what's been going on this past month, what has been hard, what has been some good moments, and I think that's been very beneficial for me.
Right.
Just so that way I'm not keeping all my emotions bottled up
Mm-hmm.
because I used to be that way, especially before I had kids. I wouldn't really share my emotions, and when I had kids, I realized that that wasn't very healthy because I didn't want to lash at them with anger just because I was dealing with my own whatever.
Right. Yeah, and so at the hospital Gianna was at, they actually had like a psychologist in the NICU.
Ah,
So she would like come around and like check on the moms and stuff. And at first I was kind of like weird about it. I don't know. And then the day that Gianna went in for her like first emergency surgery, she came in and Akeem was supposed to be out of town. So he was like trying to drive back, and she came in and I just started like bawling and talked to her, and she was there for us with every surgery and constantly checked on us. So I feel like that was definitely a great thing for the hospital to have. And
yeah,
especially when you are going through something so traumatic, you're right. Like, you don't sometimes want to talk to your husband about it, or you don't want to talk to your family about it. You just want somebody to listen to you
mhm.
and just nod their head and, yeah,
Yep,
you know what I mean? Instead of like my husband being like, oh, it's going to be fine. Like, is
yeah,
it though? Is it going to be
yeah,
fine?
yeah. That's my husband's response. Oh, it'll work out.
Yes,
And I'm like, yeah, I'm sure it will work out, but I don't think right now I want you to tell me. I think right now I just want you to listen.
exactly.
And I try to be open. I'm very open to him about that. Sometimes I just say, hey, I'm going to tell you this, and I just want you to listen. I
Mm-hmm.
don't want to hear your input right now. Maybe later I'll want to hear your input, but right now I just want you to listen. And I think, so, he has moments like that. And I feel like with men, they have a lot of emotions, but they bottle it up, you know?
Yes.
And like with my husband, especially when Abigail was first born, I know he was struggling, just because you get to know him, but he just wouldn't come out and say it.
Mhm.
He's just, oh, I'll be fine, And it
Yeah.
just got to a point where I told him, you got to learn how to share your emotions because it's only going to hurt you in the long run.
Exactly.
So I think now, he'll share his emotions, and it's not like he's all mushy mushy about it, but he'll say, hey, can we pray about this as a family? Can you pray about this for me? And I don't know. I always come back to, it's just the thought that through, through the ups and downs, God is always good,
Absolutely.
And I always, even when I'm at like my lowest points, I always hold on to that truth, and I think that's really what gets me, through it all, because I don't know if I would, and I write that up on the book, like, I don't know if I would be here, when I went through the NICU journey of Abigail, because, like I said, I saw her code, and Devin has never seen her code.
Mhm.
And that to me, I remember the first time she coded, I was carrying her, and she just went numb.
Oh my
I,
gosh.
like, at that moment, I didn't cry, I was just, like, in shock.
Yes.
Like, I didn't know how to, I don't know, I just help her. I just laid her back in the bassinet or the crib, whatever, and just called for help. But I don't know, I think I just became cold to the moment.
Yes. And it's hard too because seeing your child in the NICU, almost like, I don't want to say suffering, but like going
Mhm.
through all that and you're helpless. You can't do anything.
Yeah.
And it's hard just watching your baby code or watching your baby suffer. It's like, it's terrible because you just feel so helpless in that moment.
Yeah, yeah, and there's nothing you can do. And then I've learned, I don't know, I think now I'm one of them people that were like, I'll help and do whatever, and then I'll break later, like I'll cry later, but I try to, help the doctors, the nurses, or like if she's home, like she's only coded once at home, thankfully. And at that point, Devin was at work, so, and Gunnar was only like a year and a half, so, and I just, did what I knew to do and, just kind of deal with it. And then, once the rescue squad, came and helped, I just started crying.
Yeah.
But, I think everybody deals with different things, different, and that's okay. I just think the main thing is I think people need to have an outlet because if you don't have an outlet, whether that's writing, whether it's dancing, reading, whatever, exercising, then it's only going to hurt you and your family in the long run.
Absolutely.
Yeah. So do you want to have any more kids or?
So I I would like to have another one, but my husband is like absolutely not just because with everything that happened. Um and then I was talking to my friend and they also lost their son in 2022, I believe. They lost their son. He was a day old. And her and I were talking about it, and she was like, because I just feel like that emptiness because they're not here. And we were talking about how, like, even if we have another one, like,
You're still
you're still going to feel empty. And they did have another baby, but you still feel that emptiness of, because it'll never be my twins, you know what I mean? Like, it'll never be my girls. So that's something I like battle with is like, okay, even if I have another baby, like that void is not going to be filled. And then I was reading that because my placenta had ruptured. And then I was reading that your placenta can rupture again. Like there's a higher chance. And I'm like, I don't think I can go through that trauma again. Like that was all very, very traumatic for me. And I don't think that I could do that again. So right now we're just okay with the two, you know.
yeah.
Maybe in a few years, I don't know, but the C-section was also very traumatic for me, and I would never want to have another C-section again. So,
Yeah.
yeah.
Yeah, it's not for the weak people is what I call it because like with Abigail I had a C-section as an emergency one and like I wasn't numbed up enough so I felt like when they were opening me and
Yes.
it was
Yes.
oh
Yes. And that's how mine was because I had an epidural from the procedure prior. So by the time the C-section came, the
yep,
epidural was almost wore off. And I'll
yep,
like never forget the moment when they like literally tore open my stomach and I was
yep.
like, ugh, yeah. And I feel like too, because I know you said like your first C-section with your son, like the recovery was easier. And I feel like your recovery is harder too because you also have another one at home that's not understanding
Yeah.
like why can't you hold me? Why can't you pick me up? And
Yeah.
that was another issue with the C-section recovery is my son was like, "Well, what's going on? Like you always hold me. You always pick me up."
Yeah. Yeah. So my recovery with Abigail took, I felt like forever.
Mhm.
And I felt very numb for a while, and I felt like a lot of pain and tension, and but I don't know. At one point, like after we had Abigail and she was more stable, I don't know, maybe like 3 months ago, my husband and I talked. Well, we were at having dinner, and like a newborn baby came in, and there's nothing like the newborn baby cry, and that
Mhm.
smelled like oh, it melted me. And I knew it was melting my husband's heart because he looked at me and he smiled. But I don't know. How I see it is, God gave us two kids, and I'm at peace with having two kids, but I also don't want to have another child, with medical complexity and another child to suffer, if I could prevent it, because there is a high chance that I can pass it to another child,
Right.
and other child might be worse off than Abigail or, might not make it. And so I don't want to go through that trauma again.
Yeah.
And, the kids are getting to a point where, like Gunner's more independent now. And,
Mhm.
I don't have to like be watching him 24/7. And,
Yeah.
so I think we're getting, like, I don't know, I guess with Abigail, I feel like we don't even have to watch her 24/7 either because she's more independent and, a lot of times she'll just play with Gunner. And, so I think we're getting past the rough patch of the, your baby, newborn, and your toddler years. And
Right.
I don't think I want to relive that again just because, the first couple of years of being a mom,
Are
you know,
rough.
yeah. And I'm like, I don't want to do it anymore.
And that's like kind of what we're at too because, she'll be 5, he'll be 3. They're both potty trained. They both sleep through the night.
Yeah.
They don't sleep in their own beds yet, but we're working on that. So we're just like at a good point, and yeah, it's just and like now when I think about it, like of course, if the twins were here, I would be starting over and that's fine, but now that they're not, it's kind of like do I want to start over again?
Yeah,
So,
and the sleepless nights, when they're first newborn, you gotta
mhm.
breastfeed them or milk feed them and bottle feed them, whatever. And oh, well, Gunner was terrible. It was terrible. But like you see, I don't know. I feel like even with Abigail, like in a way, Abigail was harder, but like in a way, she's also been easier. In the fact that like, I don't have to stay up all night with her feeding her. Like during the night we do continuous feeding. She's at a very slow rate, so she gets formula the whole night
Mhm.
because she doesn't wake up.
Right.
And then we're gonna like I would have to wait like when he was first newborn, I have to wake up like every 2 hours or so, and that
Mm.
was killing. Oh,
Yes. Yes. So, when is your book supposed to come out? I'm so excited to read it.
yeah. So it was originally gonna come out at the beginning of March,
Mhm.
but I had to do some editing with the editor. So I think now it's gonna come out sometime in April. Um,
Okay.
I actually had a meeting before you called. I was having a meeting with the editor about that. So, I think it's been good for me to write that book just because I've been able to express all my emotions, things that I've never told my husband about.
Mhm.
Um, and just kind of like I've felt through this whole journey, of me not knowing that I had a syndrome and passing it down to my daughter and, the issues it caused for her and, and how Gunnar was perfectly normal and, perfectly healthy. So, and I think it's also been, I don't know, I think through the book, I've been able to share my ups and downs, but also how God has been there through the whole time. Even when I haven't felt them, even like when I was, when we've been praying about different stuff for Abigail, He didn't answer the prayers right away, but He has answered them down the road.
Right.
So I think
So,
it's been, I think it's been good. I
yeah.
think. I think the main reason I wrote the book was really to share hope to other people, NICU moms or moms that have kids with different health conditions. And so, I looked into a lot of books. When Abigail first came home to read, and there's really not a lot of books about the NICU.
Mm-hmm.
And there's not a lot of books about the syndrome Abigail has and I have. So I think it's just been a good way for me, like a good outlet for me. And I think
Yeah.
it's, I don't know, I think it's been like the healing and it's helping with the healing and the trauma. And I did go to, I did virtual counseling sessions while I was in the NICU.
Mm-hmm.
And they were beneficial, but I think it depends who your counselor is, because some counselors are like, oh, it'll be okay. And then some counselors ask you the hard questions. And I'd rather have somebody who asks me the hard question and makes me think and makes me, be upset or make me cry. I think that's more healing than just having a counselor that says, oh, you'll be fine, that kind of
Right.
bait.
Right.
So I don't know. I think counseling can be good or bad depending on who you have. And I don't know. But yeah, I think, like I said, I don't think I'll ever heal completely, and I don't think I'll definitely never be the same person I was before I had kids, or even after I had Gunner.
Absolutely.
So I would encourage you to seek counseling or have some kind of outlet, whether that's working out or writing or I don't know.
Yeah.
But
Well, I'm so excited to read the book. I can't wait for it to come out. And I'm just so
yeah,
happy for you. Like, that's amazing.
yeah, it was she was working on it for close to a year.
Wow.
So it's been I don't know, it's been hard in a way because I've been having to really dig deep down, and sometimes like there's this one chapter I'm thinking about where it was so hard to write and, like when I was writing it, I was crying a lot and like my emotions were up and down and like I was in my feelings but I think overall it's been really good and healthy for me to be able to do it and have an outlet. But
Yeah. And like that's the whole reason I wanted to start this podcast is to just help people who have been through a similar situation as me, and like I always say, like there is light at the end of the darkness. And of course there's only 10 minutes left
yeah,
of this. So and like for your book, like I know it's going to help so many people and it's going to reach so many people, and that's awesome because like you said, like there's not a lot of books about Abigail's condition, and I think that's really going to help people.
yeah, and I think that's really my main purpose and my main goal is for people to find encouragement, but mainly um to draw them near God, the people who don't believe, maybe that they'll believe, and the book I wrote down the plan of salvation,
Mhm.
and different ways, they can be saved or, and I wrote like my email down and my husband's email down, if they ever need somebody to talk to, because I feel like sometimes, you want to keep certain things to yourself and not share with your husband or your family, and, so I just wrote down my email, people can reach out to me, and I just want it to be a light, in this dark world. And so I hope it is that, obviously money will come with it. But the other day, somebody asked me at church if money was the end goal. And I'm like, no, I said, if if money was my priority, I probably would have written the book on something else.
Right.
Something that I know more about, that I feel more comfortable writing about, something that wasn't so emotional to me.
Right. Cuz
And
you literally are sharing your trauma.
yeah, and like I'm being vulnerable with everybody, with like the whole world, whoever reads it.
Yes.
So I think, like I said, I just want it to be a light, and I want to be an encouragement, and I want to share the gospel, and and hopefully, people reach out and say, hey, I got saved, or you really encouraged me, and
Yeah.
that's really, just yeah.
I'm so
I
excited.
don't, I am excited too, but I don't know. It's been a long writing that book. It's been a lot of work, and it's been very emotional writing certain chapters, so.
Yeah. Well, I'm really proud of you, and I'm so happy for you. I know it's
Good
going to be
catching up
awesome.
with you. Talking to
Yes.
For watching.
Thank you for watching. Thank you for watching and listening to this week's episode of Life's Not Fair. Remember, life's not fair, but God is good, and there's always light at the end of the darkness. And I just want to again say thank you to Adriana for coming on the episode today and sharing her story. And I will keep everyone updated for when she launches her book because I'm really excited for that. And I hope you have a great weekend. And make sure to like and subscribe and follow over on Instagram at Life's Not Fair Pod. Thanks, everybody. Bye.
Bye.